God, I love Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, don't you just love it?
With me today is Jennifer Peeples.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome to the Atheist Experience. We are, can we start over? We are a regular weekly TV show on Austin Public Access Television, sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit organization supporting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. You can check out our website at www.atheist-community.org, and specifically this TV show at www.atheist-experience.com. And be sure to check out the frequently asked questions page when you do that, because it will save you a lot of time in covering ground that people tend to cover every week. The audio and video for this program are both available on atheist-experience.com. If you go there, you can click on Archive, and you'll find a list of programs, including links to both audio and video downloads. The video is provided by Google Video, and you can also find shorter clips of us if you just poke around YouTube for a while. Also, and this is terribly important, you can now stream the show live as it happens by going to this address, www.ustream.tv/channel/the-atheist-experience. In fact, if you tune in early, you can see some of the unscripted parts of the show, unlike this, which is totally scripted, right?
Yeah.
But we've even started taking callers some of the time, and it's just sort of light pre-show banter. Let's see. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Non-Prophets. Visit www.nonprofitsradio.com. That's Prophet for more information. And the next episode will be, I don't even know. Wow, I'm so prepared today.
The next episode, I think the last episode for the year has already occurred.
Yeah, that was last week.
So I believe it's going to be...
I guess we're going to do one next week, although...
No.
No, we're not going to do one next week. So 3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Whenever that is, figure it out. In addition to our lectures, television program, and podcasts, the ACA hosts a number of regular social events, including Atheist Happy Hour every Thursday, beginning at around 7 p.m. at the Dog and Duck Pub, located at the corner of 17th and Guadalupe. Weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, except for the first Sunday of every month when we host our lecture series at the Austin History Center, located at the corner of 9th and Guadalupe. However, there will be no lecture this month. The speaker has canceled, and we're still trying to figure out what we're going to do, so stay tuned to the Atheist Community of Austin website for updates.
I think the next Non-Profits is the 10th.
Okay, thanks. The 10th. I love the internet.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. And if you enjoyed the show today and you're local to Austin, you can come to dinner after the show. Threadgill's in South Austin, 301 West Riverside Drive at Barton Springs Road, just south of downtown. And if you would like, we are a live call-in show. We'll probably start taking your calls in about 30 minutes. But if you're, let's say, too timid or something, and you don't want to call in the show, you can also email us at tv@atheist-community.org. All right, so I want to announce some general business stuff for the show right now. We are having a fifth, count them, 5 co-hosts and 2 hosts, one of whom is only here once a month. That's me, and obviously it shows right now. I'll get back in the habit, I promise. But what's going to happen is me and Matt are going to stay in this 4-week rotation, Matt 3 times and me 1 time each month. But we're going to have a 5-person rotation, which means Jen and I will no longer be appearing together all the time. Aww.
Oh, well.
I will be appearing with, Matt and I will be appearing with the other rotating co-hosts, who will be Don, Martin, Tracy, and Jeff D. Hey, everyone.
That's right. Yes, Jeff's back in the lineup now.
Yep. And I believe that's all for the announcements. Oh, wait, no, I do have one more thing to say. Matt's been hitting on this in the last few weeks. We're trying to avoid having too many calls from people who are out of town and agree with us. Originally, what's made this show popular is having just random people call in and take up contentious issues with us. So I'm going to say that we're going to limit the accessibility of people who are out of town and agree with us. If you are a theist who has heard about this show, feel free to call in. And if you're local to Austin, then call in. But we're going to be screening that, and don't be too surprised if you just want to say, hey, I love your show, and they say, thank you, but you can't go on the air right now. Yeah. Sorry, that's the way it is.
But we start the pre-show about 15 minutes early.
That's right.
And we'll stick around for a few minutes after the show.
Sure.
And so if you want to call us and talk to us then, that would be your chance.
Right, because we love our fans.
Yes.
We just don't think our fans love each other.
Yes. Okay, so are we done?
Yes.
Okay.
Go.
Okay. All right, so today's topic is moral panics.
Moral panics.
Yes. So let's talk about what that is. It was actually a term that was first described and popularized by a guy named Stanley Cohen. He published a book back in 1972, a long while ago, called Folk Devils and Moral Panics. And the term was actually coined by one of his colleagues, but that's another story. So let's talk about a little bit, what's a folk devil? Well, the folk devil is a category of people who pose some perceived threat to society at large. And they're usually cast as outsiders or deviants. And usually the threat is not an actual physical threat, but it's more of a threat to societal norms or a perceived threat to social order or morality.
Social order, especially that happens to favor people who are in power to create moral panics.
Exactly. And the moral panic itself is this widespread and often disproportionate reaction to this threat that's posed by the folk devils. And so who gets to be a folk devil? Well, atheists are often folk devils. But in this case, we've just... something's falling back there. Oh, interesting. In this case, we've just seen a moral panic recently with the Proposition 8 and the Arkansas adoption debacle. So, of course, gays are often cast as folk devils. Historically, we've had a number of other groups cast as folk devils, including Jews during pre-World War II Germany and throughout World War II. Let's see, drug abusers are often cast as folk devils.
Reefer madness.
Indeed. In fact, that was one of those things I was going to bring up.
Sorry, don't want to
No, it's great. If you've never seen a little film called Reefer Madness, this is just a classic of how to amplify a drug problem to just absurd levels. One hit off a doobie and you're done, man.
Right. What's great about Reefer Madness is, of course, that it's now a cult classic among drug users.
Or even people who don't use drugs, and see how people can react over nothing. Interestingly enough, Prohibition was probably the result of a moral panic. This idea that alcohol posed such a threat to social order that we had to ban it, and of course that didn't work at all. Another interesting thing is that one of the proposals for bringing us out of our current economic mess involves the suggestion that maybe we should legalize certain drugs because that would provide something like a $75 billion boost to the economy. So I'm sure that there will be a moral panic over that if we try that. So what are the elements of a moral panic? Well, the first thing is media of some kind. You've got to have some vehicle for hyping this. And these days, that doesn't have to actually be the mainstream media. Most of the people who promote these moral panics, who, by the way, we're going to call those moral entrepreneurs, and I'll get to who those people are in a minute. But the moral entrepreneurs out there who are out there promoting the moral panics, they typically have their own alternative sources of media these days, often called things like World Net Daily. as an example. In some cases, Fox News.
By saying moral entrepreneurs, do you mean to imply that they're making a profit off of this?
No, actually. Let me go ahead and get to those, because I want to talk about those for a minute. But let's go ahead and talk about who these people are. The moral entrepreneurs, I categorize them as the do-gooders who are going to keep us all from going to hell in a handbasket, because they have, in mind what's the right thing to do and what will restore social order or maintain it, and that's their goal. They're going to get people to adopt or maintain some kind of social norm, usually something that corresponds to, in certain cases, their religious beliefs. So they typically form some kind of action group to promote this agenda. And in fact, one of the key indicators that a moral panic is underway is the speed with which these action groups form. So if you see these groups forming practically overnight, you can almost bet that a moral panic is in the offing. And there are actually two types of moral entrepreneurs that we typically deal with. There are the real creators, and these are people who, they're kind of moral crusaders, and they're not really concerned with whether the means to the end are necessarily ethical, or whether the facts they put out there are even actual facts. A lot of times it's just fiction. And then, of course, we've got the real enforcers, and these people are often motivated by a need for respect or a need to justify their own role in society. And they're often pretty pessimistic about human nature. Now, again, we see this a lot with certain religious ideologies that promote the idea that we're inherently evil. And therefore we're in need of someone to enforce social order. And of course, their God has the ultimate moral code. So
well, large part of what religion is about, when you come down to it, is divisiveness. I mean, tribalism.
Yeah, and these people are really good at dividing us into us and them. And again, going back to the media thing, there's this hype cycle that happens, and actually Cohen described it as the deviancy amplification spiral. And it was basically, there was this concern, it's this awareness that some behavior of the group or something in question might have a negative impact on society. And for example, in the Prop 8 thing, one of the things is they could no longer generate enough outrage among people that, gay people getting married was somehow going to impact heterosexual marriage. So they kept that, but they added on the fact that, if we have gay marriage, then your child is going to hear about gay marriage in kindergarten. As if that would be a bad thing. And then, of course, there's this generation of hostility toward the group they've identified as the folk devils. And then, then there's that clear division between them and us. And then after that, they go about seeking consensus. And it doesn't even have to be nationwide consensus. They typically will go look toward people who share their own particular ideology, especially with regard to something like the institution of marriage. So you've got religious groups that turn to other conservative religious groups for validation of their concerns. And then, of course, there's an element of disproportionality to the panic. The fears are wildly out of proportion to what will actually take place. And, of course, in the Prop 8 thing and also the Arkansas anti-gay adoption ban, or the gay adoption ban in Arkansas, they hyped the perceived threat to children. So they were using children as a means of getting people to support this, even though the threat to children was non-existent in both cases.
I heard a discussion with a person shortly before the election who was pushing for Prop 8, and the host was not sympathetic to her, but he was saying, "Can you tell me exactly what the problem is with allowing gay marriage?" And she said, "Oh, well, we're not about keeping them from getting married. We're about preserving traditional marriage."
Yeah.
I was just frustrated that the guy did not follow up and say, how so? You know, what the hell threat? What specific threat to traditional marriage does letting gay marriage cause? I mean, all this person could say over and over again was, it's changing the definition of marriage. Oh no!
Yeah.
You know, we could change the definition of a word. Like, that never happens.
Yeah, and never mind that we've changed the definition of marriage, we've changed the definitions of family structures, and a lot of what people perceive as being the traditional family structure was actually kind of a myth. This whole Ozzie and Harriet thing, that was TV. And there's actually a woman named Stephanie, I think her name is Stephanie Coons, who has written a bunch of books. One of them that's pretty good is called The Way We Never Were. And it was about family structures and this idealized notion of what a family is like and how that really never was the case. So that's worth a read if you are interested in how we've actually changed how we define things.
It's worth reminding people frequently that in the Old Testament, polygamy, like lots of polygamy, was not just permitted but condoned.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the great heroes of the Bible had like dozens or hundreds of wives.
Yeah.
Solomon.
Yeah. Yes. And
so there's traditional marriage for you, which makes it especially ironic when people say, "Oh, if you let gay people get married, that's just the first step in the slippery slope to allowing polygamy." Oh yeah, like in the Bible.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's why some of the biggest supporters of Prop 8 were from Utah. Yeah.
Yeah, don't they have some religious thing about some marriage thing?
Yeah.
Can't put my finger on it.
And that is actually a fact. Most of the out-of-state money that supported Proposition 8 came from Utah. And, there's... I think if you're not a Mormon in Utah, you're automatically a folk devil or something, because almost everyone is.
When there's different groups that like to demonize different people, my favorite thing to do is pit them against each other.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, I love nothing more than to see like a moderate Christian and a very conservative, or like a very conservative Christian and a very conservative Jew getting along with each other on TV and then saying like, so, do you believe that Jesus is your personal savior, Jew?
Yeah.
Jewish person?
Yeah. Okay. So getting back to some of the elements of a moral panic here, one of the key elements here is the interaction of government agencies, or I should say official agencies that get involved in this. And an example here is like law enforcement. So in the case of like drug abusers, you get law enforcement. You got to be tough on crime, and that usually involves having really draconian drug penalties, for example. In the case of some types of moral panics, child welfare agencies get involved. One of the big moral panics of our time was, I think it was back in the, was it the 80s when the McMartin preschool, the sex abuse scandal came out?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, there was a scandal that involved a preschool in California. I believe this was back in the 80s. The McMartin preschool, where a bunch of kids came forward and accused these teachers of having sexually molested them. And this mushroomed into this satanic ritual abuse claim. And so this thing spread like a panic all over the place. And there were people who were accused of ritually abusing children, murdering infants, things like that. And of course, when police investigated this, there was never any physical evidence that this was actually going on. But people absolutely believed it. And because of the interview techniques that some of the social workers and law enforcement agencies used against these children, the children ended up telling these very fanciful tales that involved, some really horrific instances of abuse. Unfortunately, for the people involved, a lot of innocent people were sent to prison. And in fact, there's still a guy in prison in California who was convicted of molesting his son, even though his son has long since recanted and said that never happened. I just believed that if I didn't say what they wanted me to say, that I wouldn't ever be allowed to go home. And so,
terrible.
Yeah, so he's still sitting in prison because in every other case, there were several other people convicted in that particular case, but there was always some kind of flaw in the prosecution's case, and they were able to uncover it. For example, one of the girls who said that her father molested her, they came up with a physical examination where the nurse that examined her said there's no evidence of sexual abuse. And so that was one of the things that was used to help free her father.
Yeah, I've also heard a lot about so-called repressed memories. Does that tie into this?
Yeah, that's connected because
yeah, there are a lot of cases. You can read about this on the Skeptics Dictionary. They have a pretty good article about it there, where there are a lot of cases where people, under basically what would be known as leading the witness in court, psychiatrists would give people leading questions, which would lead people to think, oh yeah, I do remember something like my father coming in when I was asleep at night, and then so having a lot of cases where they claim not to have remembered until it was drawn out of them that there was molestation by people who are ultimately innocent. Yes.
Yeah, and in the case of young children, they're particularly suggestible.
Right.
So you have to be careful how, and of course now, as a result of all this, we have interview techniques that are pretty good at interviewing children, but not foolproof. And then, of course, so child welfare agencies sometimes get involved in this. Even other agencies like professional associations can sometimes get involved in this. In some cases, they're not actually professional associations, but they are like pseudo-professional organizations. And one of the favored tactics of some of these people involved in anti-gay research and stuff like that is that they set up some kind of institute for researching this problem, and then of course they come up with their own view of what is essentially an ideological divide. They put this out there as legitimate social research, and of course it's not. One of the major offenders in this is a guy named Paul Cameron. I want to talk a little bit about him because he's actually where a lot of this so-called data on how gay people in particular are not appropriate as parents or foster parents. That factored heavily into the Arkansas adoption bill. He's actually the originator of a lot of this research. And it was methodologically unsound, and I'll talk to him in a minute, but I want to get through the elements of the moral panic. The last thing that is involved here is politicians and legislators. Politicians rise to the occasion and say, oh, well, we'll pass a law. And the legislators, of course, hop on the bandwagon and fight over who's going to write the law and who's going to vote for it and stuff like that. So, what's a good moral panic without a politician in the mix? So
it's good political theater.
Absolutely. And that's one of the best ways to describe it, is political theater. So those are the elements of a moral panic. Media, public perceptions, the public perceives this brewing threat. You've got government agencies, politicians and legislators, and of course the moral entrepreneurs who are sort of directing things behind the scenes.
Right. It seems to me a good person to level a moral panic against is somebody that people already don't trust, but also don't actually have very much power themselves. Because if they have a certain level of actual power, then they could fight it and be a dangerous opponent. But if you go after, what comes to mind is Dungeons and Dragons players, which was also a big thing during the 80s, right? I mean, there's no good organized Dungeons and Dragons coalition there. So I mean, who's going to hear the other side if you've got people yelling about D&D destroying our children? Or
rock music. For a while among religious circles, there was this whole idea about backmask rock music, that if you play your music backwards, that you're going to hear satanic messages.
Did you know that Weird Al actually did that?
Yeah.
You did, okay.
Yeah, well, and when...
I like to actually mention On the song "Nature Trail to Hell," Weird Al plays this scene, plays this clip that's obviously backwards stuff, and it's easy to turn records around now because of digital technology. And backwards it says, "Satan eats cheese whiz."
Well, and of course, Santa is an anagram for Satan.
Oh, of course, yeah. I doubt that was as intentional.
Yeah. So,
Sinterklaas doesn't really work as well.
yeah. Okay, so we've got all of our elements here, and I want to hit the media thing again one more time because historically the requirement was mainstream media picked up on something. And they could influence public perceptions by selectively reporting events. For example, back in the 80s, they were reporting lots of like drug overdoses and things, and so people's perception by like around 1989 was that drug abuse was like the biggest threat our country faced, even though it absolutely wasn't. But that was his public perception. Drug abuse actually hadn't increased. I think it was actually on the decline by then. Same thing with recently Oprah Winfrey had a show on about these so-called rainbow parties where young girls were having sex at these parties and everything. It turns out that was an urban legend.
Right.
Urban legends are another big source of moral panics. And of course there's also, the internet, blogging, whatever. And unfortunately, with some of these alternative news sources, they claim that, the mainstream media won't touch this because it's politically incorrect. But in fact, a lot of times it's just incorrect. And that's why the mainstream media is not touching it. So, you have a case of either non-journalists out there reporting sensationalist hype or just shoddy journalism that reinforces a lot of this stuff. So the public can often end up with a skewed proportion or a skewed perception of what the biggest threat is out there. For example, in the 90s and even into this century or this decade, you would probably have believed that maybe school shootings were a significant threat.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're not any more likely than they were.
Well, I kind of have
that.
a theory about the way the internet and cable news has changed the way people perceive danger, because our brains are sort of geared to assess local probabilities.
Right.
So if we hear, for instance, that 3 children got molested or got, let's say, kidnapped in our tribe, I mean, within a 10-mile radius,
right.
within the last month, we would rightly panic. We would say, oh my gosh, there is a kidnapping epidemic.
Right.
On the other hand, everything international is now local.
Right.
So you can tune in on the internet, and everybody who gets kidnapped, especially if it's an attractive young blonde female, everybody who gets kidnapped is now national news. And so you can turn on the TV, you can follow them week by week, and then you can hear, oh my God, another attractive young blonde female just got kidnapped right after the last one.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, one was in Wisconsin and one was in California.
Yeah.
But they all seem local to us now, and so because we're bad at doing probabilities, we think there's this huge epidemic, which we didn't think so much when the news wasn't so when the news was more local.
Right. Well, that and it's one of those things that I forget who it was that coined the term, the boiled frog syndrome. It's the whole notion that if you take a frog and you put him in a pot of lukewarm water and you slowly raise the temperature, he'll sit there until he boils.
Right.
But if you drop a frog into hot water, he'll immediately hop out because he perceives the threat. And we are evolutionary.
Am I going to have to call you on another urban legend?
Well, it's just an analogy.
I just want to make sure people don't think Jen really believes that. Because
no.
In fact, when you do the experiment, the frog jumps out of the slowly turned up water.
Yeah, they actually, but it's just an analogy. But, it's called the boiled frog syndrome. It's the idea that evolution sort of wired us to react to an immediate perceived threat, but the more gradual threats we just don't really react to until suddenly it's like, holy cow, I'm about to get eaten or something, you know. And so because of this, we'll look at news reports of drug addiction or, you know, young blonde females getting kidnapped, and we'll think that's the single biggest threat we face. And we'll ignore things like, you know, the economic indicators are starting to turn down, and maybe we need to make some adjustments.
Right, like 9/11.
Yeah.
You know, 3,000 or 6,000 people died on that day, which is very tragic. But a lot more people than that die in car accidents or of obesity. So, I mean, you know, if you have to figure out what to funnel resources into, anti-terrorism stuff is surely one important priority, and it's one of the sexiest ones. But it's not. But you might actually save more lives if you put more energy into something else.
Yeah, like everybody getting a flu shot every year, because you know, in a bad year, deaths from flu can equal a 9/11 like once a month. So. So anyway, let's. I want to go ahead and wrap this up real quick because it looks like we have full phone lines here, and one of them's out of state. So,
how about this? I'm going to take the out-of-state call every third caller. So, first two people will be local.
You want to go ahead and take this because he's been on hold for about 15 minutes here.
I'm going to take line 2 first then.
Oh,
or
okay.
Should I take the out-of-town guy
Let's
first?
go ahead and take the out-of-town guy.
All right, but this is the only time.
Okay.
Stephen, you're on from North Carolina. Hello.
I can barely hear you.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, well. Yeah, we've got you.
I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, I mean, I figured since you're talking about moral panic, I guess what I got to say is there's some relevance about how people like to say that atheism leads to war and genocide.
They do say that, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of like Stalin and Mao and all like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I hear that all the time though.
Well, the thing about that is though, their atheism isn't what caused them to do any of the things they did.
Yeah, I mean, I just because the point I like to bring up though is that like. Because they like to say that because these individuals, decide to do extreme things. Like I do realize that like Stalin, he did do some things in the name of atheism. Because he did kill I've at least heard this, like he's killed religious people in order to like promote atheism in a sort of violent way.
Well, it wasn't atheism per se, and Russell, correct me if I'm wrong. It was actually, he didn't want anybody else interfering with his drive to power.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying like everything he did was in the name of atheism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, religions routinely try to suppress one another, and so the suppression of religion is not in itself an expression of atheism. And in this case, it wasn't a religion that Stalin was promoting. It was an ideology.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be quite fair to say that communism is a religion, and therefore we blame atheist communism on religion, because that would be kind of a spurious connection. But it is the same kind of thing of requiring a vacuum in order to insert your ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, the point I try to bring up a lot, though, is that, you can, like, basically take any belief to an extreme.
Right.
I mean, any individual can take a belief to an extreme, but what really matters is if the belief in itself is extreme.
Right. Well, I don't know.
Atheism isn't. It doesn't even have a doctrine that, that preaches extremism and, doctrine at all.
This is an area where I disagree with Matt, because Matt says that atheism can't drive you to act in some way.
That's what I'm saying though. It's like atheism in no way can cause you to be extreme.
Well, I mean, we've had this disagreement on the nonprofits. I'm actually of the opinion that if in the generic sense faith can be blamed for certain actions, then not having faith can induce you to act in other ways.
With you there,
Right.
so, sometimes religion, not only is the justification but the inspiration for criminal acts.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just that but I'm not going to blame the religion if the religion is not extreme.
Well, you might. I mean, it depends on what the religion says.
And
I think that you can take
Christianity though.
Right.
Like I know a lot of people like to bring up the Old Testament, but I mean, I would have to agree with the Christians though that like Jesus does pretty much imply that the Old Testament laws don't they don't.
That's not what he
in
said.
fact, he implies the opposite. In fact, he directly states the opposite. At one point, he says, "I have not come to change."
5:17.
I guess I haven't memorized it by chapter and verse.
Yeah, I mean, it's the problem I have with that verse though is that like right after he says that, he ends up listing off the 10 Commandments and a few times refers to them as the law.
Yeah.
And I mean, he does say throughout the New Testament, to keep, to obey the 10 Commandments. So that's why I'm kind of thinking that, maybe he was just referring to the 10 Commandments.
No, I mean,
well, that's
that
not
would
what he
be
said.
kind of a narrow reading of the verse.
Yeah.
I mean, what he actually said was, "I have not come to change one bit of the law." And it would seem like one of those extreme contortions to say, "Oh, by the law, he only meant this specific part of the Old Testament."
Oh, yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying. He doesn't make it clear when he says that. Like whether or not he's referring to everything in the Old Testament, or if he's just referring to specific things. Just what I was saying though is that like right after he says that though, he ends up listing off the 10 Commandments.
Okay.
Okay. So what do you?
But I mean, I can't agree with you that Christianity doesn't lend itself to extremism. I mean, it has a central doctrine that people that people are evil and deserve to be tortured forever unless they have a specific belief in
that
this.
is true.
Yeah.
In this religion.
It's just like the religion, like what most of the Christians though, that they, whenever they, believe though that Jesus did abolish the Old Testament laws. They're most of the time they're not going to be going out, slaughtering people or anything.
Right. Well, but I mean that only proves that people can have varying degrees of extremism with respect to any particular religion. I mean, there are moderate Muslims that I respect a lot, but there are also the batshit crazy fly planes into building types.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was just trying to use like Christianity as like. An example of where I personally don't really think it's an extreme religion.
Okay.
But, other religions like Islam, though, I think it says around like the end of days, you have to slaughter and kill the non-believers.
Well, I think we're going to move on.
It says that. I'm not really sure, though.
Right. Okay, well, thanks for calling, Stephen. I think we're going to move on to some local callers, so see ya.
Okay.
You want to take another call or keep on with?
Let me go ahead and wrap this up here, and we'll just take some calls here.
Gotcha.
So let's talk a little bit about Proposition 8 as a moral panic. We've made some allusions to this, and part of it is it played on people's fears that the status of their marriage would somehow be diminished if gay people were allowed to marry. And in the process of doing this, they, just like typical rule creators, the moral crusaders, they trampled on the truth. They made some demonstrably false claims, one of which was that churches will lose their tax-exempt status if they don't perform gay weddings, which of course is absolutely false. For example, if someone suggests this to you, you can ask them, if an interracial couple walked into, say, a Baptist church or whatever and said, we want to get married, and the pastor, for whatever reason, declined to marry them, would they have any legal recourse on that? And the answer is absolutely not. A church can
Get married somewhere else.
Yeah, they can get married somewhere else.
I mean,
they still
I don't have a
access to
problem
civil
with-
marriage.
Yeah.
And that was the whole issue.
Oh, yeah, okay, I got you.
That it had nothing to do with forcing a church to do something that violated their particular doctrine. And, again, if you walk into a church and the pastor refuses to perform the wedding ceremony for any reason at all, you have no legal recourse. You just go to another church. No one can force a church to do something that's against their doctrine. And the second thing is that children are going to be taught about gay marriage in kindergarten. And of course, that overlooks the fact that if your children go to a school somewhere, anywhere, they're likely to run into the children of gay or lesbian parents. And in that case, they're going to know that some people have a mommy and a daddy, and some people have two daddies, and some people have two mommies. And you're going to have to figure out how you deal with that. Mm-hmm. The kids are going to be fine. If nobody makes a big deal out of that, they're not going to make a big deal out of it either.
Right. And of course, according to that theory, that we shouldn't allow gay marriage on the grounds that we'd have to teach our children about it, there are all kinds of things that adults can indulge in that children shouldn't, that we wouldn't want our kids learning about.
And, in terms of...
I guess under that theory, we ought to outlaw war.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't allow explicit violence for children, so...
I think this is particularly ridiculous considering the fact that a lot of the people that I'll just flat out say this. There's no secular argument against gay marriage or adoption or fostering of children by gay people. There are no secular arguments against that.
I have heard people attempt to make secular arguments against gay marriage. The only ones I've heard really attempt to say that there should be no marriage at all, which doesn't really count.
Yeah.
And then there's also sort of a pretty lame attempt at an evolution argument, like
because underpopulation is a real problem in the world today.
There aren't enough. There aren't enough babies being born.
Yes.
And last week, Tracy, I just have to repeat this because it was so awesome. Yeah. She said on the show, "Well, if everybody was female, then the population would die out. That doesn't mean that being female is immoral."
Right. Yes. I was actually in the studio audience last week, so I thought her reply was particularly good.
I just listened to that on the way over here, and it was great.
Yeah. And so there's this idea that the kids are going to be somehow harmed by this as well, and that's coming up often. A lot of the even atheists that write to us say, okay, I don't really have a problem with gay people getting married, but if there's kids involved, hey, there's a third party involved in this. So wake up and smell the coffee, people. Anytime you bring a child into a relationship, whether it's heterosexual or homosexual, if a child is involved, there's a third party, the kid. So you have to figure out how you're going to raise the kid. And the mechanisms for doing that are pretty much the same, whether one parent is male and the other female, or whether they're both the same sex. Okay? The Arkansas adoption bill is also an example of a moral argument or a moral panic because this was based on Paul Cameron's research that says that gay men in particular are more likely to molest children, and their families are unstable, and they're more likely to use recreational drugs or stay out partying and stuff like that. Again, his research methods are pretty shoddy, but this was used, they first attempted to do this in 2006. That ban on gay adoption in Arkansas was struck down as unconstitutional. So they drafted the current bill. It was drafted by an organization called the Arkansas Family Council. It was supported by Focus on the Family. And it affects all unmarried couples now. So it doesn't matter if you're gay or straight. If you're an unmarried couple cohabiting, you cannot foster or adopt children in Arkansas. Now, these people have made the outrageous claim that they are actually promoting adoption, and that this is going to result in more families being available to adopt children in Arkansas, because now heterosexual married couples are going to step up to the plate and do this. And so my question to them is, why weren't they stepping up to the plate in the first place? So I've talked a lot about Paul Cameron, so I want to get into who this guy is. He actually started out his career, he's an academic, he's got a PhD. He was at the University of Nebraska for a while. He was conducting research on a lot of things, one of which was homosexuality. And so at some point he got aligned with some very conservative individuals and started doing research into origins of homosexuality, and in particular things like the lifespan of the average homosexual. And he ended up being kicked out of the American Psychological Association because he misrepresented some research by other researchers. So he was not necessarily all that honest. He was also criticized by the American Sociological Association, again, for mischaracterizing other people's research. The Canadian Psychological Association published a statement distancing itself from him. And so basically, every major social science organization has published something repudiating Paul Cameron's ideas. And to give you an example of how sloppy his research methods were, when he was doing a study on longevity of gay men, for example, he used the obituaries in gay newspapers as the source of his material. So totally skewed sample there, and that's just an example of one of the things. Now,
and to suss out why it's probably a skewed sample, the average person who's likely to be either reading or mentioned in a gay magazine, like any activist magazine, probably skews younger to begin with. That's not a scientific survey of people who die and are gay. You'd have to actually do some work other than just, I mean, you know, this is a pet peeve of mine as somebody who was really into data mining in grad school.
Yeah.
You have to actually do some work to make sure that you have unbiased samples of everyone who dies and is gay.
yes.
And I don't know how you do that, but that's not it.
Yeah. So anyway, in his quest to demonstrate that the gay lifestyle, as he put it, was somehow, would cause you to die young or whatever, he formed this Institute for the Scientific Investigation of Sexuality in Lincoln, Nebraska. This thing later became the Family Research Institute, so you guys are probably familiar with that name.
You gotta love how they always have to tack the word science onto it in some capacity, because they know science has some credibility in its own right, and so they figure they can piggyback on that.
Yes.
That's what cargo cult science is all about.
Absolutely. So anyway, he's the guy whose research is most often cited by opponents of either gay marriage or gay parenting. And to give you an example of someone who most recently used some of Paul Cameron's research, there was a recent case in Florida, because as some of you may know, Florida has a ban on gay people adopting children. You can be foster parents. You can foster children that no one else wants, people that need the best parenting out there. And in fact, a lot of gay couples had taken on the HIV positive infants and other, the crack babies and other babies that just, nobody else wanted to take on a kid that had special needs. And so gay parents would take these kids on. And in some cases, once the kids were a little older and it became obvious that they weren't going to suffer the serious side effects of, for example, their prenatal environment, then they became adoptable. And a lot of these kids were taken from the only home they had ever known and placed up for adoption by heterosexual married couples. Earlier this year, a gay couple in Florida who had been caring for two half-brothers for the last 4 years filed for adoption of these two boys. And all of the social workers agreed that the children were thriving in their homes. However, this was opposed by the state because of the ban on gay adoption. So they challenged it in court. One of the experts that was called by the state of Florida was a guy who, he's retired now, but he cited Paul Cameron's research as part of his opposition, claiming that gays are more likely to be, drug abusers, they're more likely to stay out late, be neglectful parents, whatever. And so on cross-examination, he admitted that he also wouldn't favor placing children in the homes of, for example, Native Americans, because, there's a high percentage of alcoholism among Native Americans, and Native Americans tend to hang around each other, therefore, the kids would be exposed to this.
Perfect.
Yeah. So this is the kind of guy we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so, let's go ahead and take some calls here.
Okay.
So we got full lines
next
again.
we have Max from Austin. Are you there? Oops, wait. Max, are you there?
Yeah, I mean,
How's it going?
it's going pretty good. How are you guys?
Good.
Pretty good.
Cool. Well, yeah, I just had a couple questions. It's the basic theme of atheism, there's no God, there's no, power other than science. Right? So, if there's nobody watching over you, there's no good, there's no evil.
Wait a minute. When did... Hey. Wait!
Yeah?
Who said there was no good or evil? And who said there's nobody watching over you, for that matter?
The whole basic idea of good and evil is someone else dies.
What? No, you're wrong.
No.
At least that's not how I see it. All right, then prove it.
Okay. Prove it. Well, prove your idea.
No, you're making this claim that, you're making this assertion that we haven't agreed to. So
Yeah, the burden of proof is on you.
you're going to have to back up that assertion before we move on.
Back up one of the person.
You just said that the whole idea of good and evil is based around death. No, it's not.
No, not based around death. Not based around death. Based around someone else walking over you.
Okay.
No, it isn't.
So back that up.
No, not really. I mean,
No.
good and evil basically is a matter of how you relate to other people. I mean, if you steal something from somebody, it's not immoral because somebody was watching you steal and said that it's wrong. It's wrong because stealing something actually causes some kind of hurt to that other person. Basically, it's kind of axiomatic that suffering is a bad thing. Will you agree with me there?
Exactly. Suffering is a bad thing.
Okay.
And the whole idea of morals is like, how can you even have morals without an idea of good and evil?
Well, it's really simple. It's really simple, actually. It's because I care about other people's suffering and don't want to see people get hurt.
Yeah, and nobody does.
Right. So what does that have to do with a God?
It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with a God.
Okay. Then I think, where were you going with linking atheism to not believing in good and evil?
Because the whole idea of good and evil is based upon someone else judging you.
Didn't we just go over this a second ago?
Yeah.
I haven't agreed with you on that point, so you're going to have to make a better case for it.
Right, that's what it is with you either. You don't have to make a point of it.
Okay. Well, then you're saying something and I'm saying something, and we're not
I
agreeing.
think we're fine.
So, I just don't want you to wander off as if we've agreed to this point.
Right.
Okay?
I mean, like, if you don't believe in a God,
Uh-huh.
how are you ever supposed to, enjoy helping anybody if you can't creep in your moral fantasies?
Didn't I just say how?
Not really.
Okay.
So you think that in order to enjoy helping other people, you have to believe in a God?
So they're saying, like, everything is blood. All of life is just the feelings you get from other people, and it doesn't matter what else is happening.
Well, no, you're assuming that you're assuming some extremes here by assuming that either you don't care at all or life is perfect as long as and everything is about helping other people. There's a middle ground,
Isn't the whole idea of atheism an extreme just as the whole idea of believing in a God?
No, the idea of atheism is very simple. It's I don't believe in stuff like a supernatural being who created the universe and has magical powers unless I have good reason to do so. It's no different from my not believing in leprechauns or unicorns or omnipotent beings named Q.
Unicorns are real.
Okay.
The other day, I was just chilling with
Crank.
Yeah.
But it was a good discussion.
Yeah.
Next we have David.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I'm calling from South Austin, and you're mentioning about the moral panics around children and kidnappings. I've always wondered if the Amber Alert signs were partially there by the government to keep us stirred up and in a state of panic. Most of the alerts are about minor child custody disputes. Occasionally it's a child that's actually kidnapped, but sometimes they're thousands of miles away. And it seems like the money that was spent on this nationwide system of billboards would be much better service to spend it on law enforcement unless they were designed to keep us frightened, sort of like the panics about the school shootings, which led to zero tolerance of nail clippers and pictures of guns and such.
Yeah,
wait, you're saying you could spend money that actually accomplishes something instead of making people uneasy about that thing?
Just curious, yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't have a real problem with the Amber Alerts, and as I understand it, they actually are localized. So, for example, we don't get the Amber Alerts for the Dallas-Fort Worth area or the Houston area. But I think they actually do serve a useful purpose, and part of that is, even in cases of child custody disputes, a lot of times the child in question is at some risk because the non-custodial parent is known to be, either abusive or unstable or something. And so even in the case of a child custody dispute, I don't have a problem with using an Amber Alert to recover a child, particularly since the child's best chances of coming out of that without any permanent damage is going to be if they recover the kid pretty quickly. So, in that case, I don't think this actually qualifies as a moral panic, because for one thing, the state of alarm that's generated is usually not that disproportional to the actual risk.
Do you think it does damage to children when they're explained that those signs are sort of like to protect when you're kidnapped? Sort of like the pictures on the milk cartons, do they cause more distress among children than they actually help?
I don't know that really young children pay that much attention to them, and by the time they're...
I know that, Ben, when he was young, was able to become concerned about very remote images. Like, you remember the big flood in New Orleans, and, we were always pretty open with him, and so we would explain to him, these things you're seeing on TV, there's a big flood and a lot of people died. And then he started worrying about dying in a flood, which, it's the trade-offs about being open.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that in cases like that, you've got a kid who's exposed to actual images of stuff, and, these billboard signs don't have an image of a kid in trouble. They usually just have a description of the car and maybe the alleged abductor and a kid. And so I know, my son, he's not at an age where he would pay that much attention to it, and, I guess we pay attention to it because we're kind of geared toward protecting children and stuff.
But people who have kids are more paranoid about about kids.
But in terms of the trauma that it does to a kid, I think, like Russ was saying, seeing images on TV is probably more traumatic for them than actually reading a billboard.
Well, okay. Well, thanks a lot. Oh, and in regard to the previous caller, I've been an atheist for about 20 years, and I work for a nonprofit, so it is possible for people to do things that are good just because they feel like it.
Yes.
So, well, y'all have a good day.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for calling.
Okay.
Do you have more of your topic to wrap up?
Just one last comment I was going to say. I find it really ironic that people are so panicked about how to explain gay marriage to their children, and because these are typically religious people. They don't seem to have a problem explaining
hell,
hell, or Jesus' horrific death on a cross. So if you can explain crucifixion to a small child, I think you can probably explain two people loving each other.
Yeah, probably. I don't have a problem explaining gay marriage at all. I think I would definitely have more of a problem with, your grandma was actually an unbeliever, so she's in a pit of fire right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't crossed that bridge yet.
All right. We're going to take our token out-of-state call, and that is Cole from Guam. How about that?
Hello.
Hi, Cole.
Hi, I'm a little nervous, so I'm sorry if I stutter.
No problem.
I'd like to thank you guys for, presenting atheism in a positive way.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm pretty much the only atheist here.
In all of Guam?
Is it mostly Catholic?
Yeah, Catholic. And, all right. There's this thing that's been bugging me for a while. About a month ago, because I'm in high school, one of my classmates asked me whether I was an agnostic or an atheist. And I've been watching the show a while, so I think I've got a better understanding of it. So I explained I'm both. And he had a problem with that for some reason. And, him and a bunch of other guys started ganging up on me, saying, you can't be both. And I explained to them, it's not mutually exclusive. And one thing led to another, and maybe like 30 kids kind of surrounding me, just asking me questions.
Were they threatening in any way, or were they just asking?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I face this a lot. My grandparents don't talk to me. I've had some teachers call me some slanderous, words. And I was just wondering if you guys have ever faced any discrimination, or if you know anyone that has.
Yeah, I actually faced some negative consequences in the military. One of the things you find is that a lot of these so-called fundamentalist Christians are not very nice people when pressed about their beliefs. And it's a real shame. I mean, I don't even know what to tell you, except, are you going to a public school, or is this a private school? Or?
The private school is Catholic school.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah.
Still, I mean, you might want to talk to the ACLU and find out,
Well, they're not in Guam, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I personally feel kind of lucky in this regard. I don't really feel like I've ever been particularly discriminated against. I went to elementary school in Alabama, and I often tell this story about how when some kids found out I was an atheist, they treated me more like an oddity than a threat. They were like, wait, you don't believe in God? But isn't that weird? And I've even had discussions, like, closed-door discussions with, like, my very Christian supervisor at work. And it didn't really lead to any negative problems, because I tend to be pretty open and friendly about the topic. On the other hand, I know somebody who right now is dealing with a divorce, and her husband is playing the atheism card, but when he's nominally Christian, but he's not really had a problem with her atheism for a long time. But now that they're divorcing, he's using that against her. He's acting like he's a good churchgoer as a means of trying to get custody of their kids, and I think that's despicable.
Okay.
So everybody's experience is different.
All right. I'm watching a lot of atheist shows now.
Okay.
I consider myself an agnostic when I was 9, and you guys have made me an atheist. Long time ago.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right, thanks for calling.
Thanks, Bill.
Coming up next, unless you have more material.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take the callers here.
Wait a minute. We just had 2 out-of-state callers. No more right now. We're going to go with David in Austin.
Okay. Right. Hi, David.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good.
Hi.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you if, let me turn down my TV. I just wanted to ask you if your support of gay marriage is actually a stance of the ACA. Is it the ACA? Austin, atheist community of Austin?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
There's been some controversy on that. There was a discussion about making it an official stance, but I don't believe that was ever put into effect.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of disagreements in the past, even among individuals who actually support gay marriage, kind of draw the line at having the ACA get involved with something that may not be their business.
Yeah.
And then there are a lot of people who think that, like Jen said, there are no good secular arguments against gay marriage, and so the ACA should be perfectly confident in taking a stand for it. I wish I could answer your question better, but I don't think I know.
Yeah, I think the ACA has officially come out in support of, for example, the Gay Pride celebration here in Austin.
Right, sure, we have a presence there every year.
But I don't know that we have an official position on gay marriage.
Okay. So this is more your personal argument?
Well, this was, we brought this up in the context of the Proposition 8 and the Arkansas gay marriage ban. It is a moral panic that's inspired primarily by people's religious beliefs.
I will say that I know almost no atheists who are opposed to gay marriage, except for the reasons I said before, like they don't think there should be any marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is a pretty valid argument on some levels. I think government sanctioned marriage, it's really more about the legal breakup of the marriage than it is sanctioning their union.
Well, I mean, there are specific rights and responsibilities that come with marriage that you can't get with any other kind of relationship, even if you go to an attorney and you say, okay, drop these, and the marriage license is something like $35 in Texas, and to go to an attorney and have paperwork drawn up to get even a fraction of those rights and responsibilities, it'll cost you a lot more than $35.
Well, let me ask you, what is the advantage that, as you see it, that a gay couple is wanting to attain by being sanctioned as married as opposed to just living together and doing everything with private contracts between the two parties? Like as far as inherited, if one of them passes away and they have an inheritance or something, you can do that with a private contract. What is the advantage they're trying to attain by getting a marriage?
Well, I mean, inheritance is one thing. I mean, if you are legally married and you die without a will, your spouse, assuming you have no children, your spouse is by default your heir. So there's that. There's the whole deal of who makes medical decisions for you, and I mean most people have some kind of medical power of attorney anyway, but your spouse is automatically allowed to have access to, for example, your hospital room if you're sick. So those are things, and people have recognized these as basic civil rights and have put into law in some cases, the ability of gay couples to do this for each other, even in the absence of marriage.
I think that more to the point is that marriage is a host of legally understood rights and sanctions that are extremely easy. And while you can go after each one of those individual rights with a lot of legal wrangling and a lot of legal and a lot of expenses, married couples just have that by default. Because I mainly think of marriage as a contract and not as a religious issue. I mean, to me, the religion aspect of it is separate and their business. I don't see any good reason why the state should extend these rights and sanctions and yet make gay couples jump through all these hoops when they're clearly in the same arrangement, regardless of their gender.
Well, I think as far as the state is concerned, it's not a religious arrangement, it is a legal contract.
And I agree with that, it should be.
So whenever I ask you what they're trying to attain, you didn't really answer specifically. What I'm really trying to get at is, do they want to adopt children as a married couple so they will be able to do it? Or is there, as far as inheritance, people do wills, so even married people do wills normally, and you can have a living will if you're alive in the hospital, and if you want somebody to come visit you, I think you could do that with your own personal will, a living will. But I'm just curious as to what the angle is, because
to me, they're wanting to get something, and I'm not sure if it's health benefits from their spouses or their partner's job, or whether it's wanting to adopt children, or exactly what they're trying to attain by achieving a marriage.
Actually, if I can turn this question around, are you married?
Well, no, I'm not, and I'm just trying to understand what because it seems to me what they're trying to do is they're trying to get some type of moral approval of their relationship.
I don't think I think you're mistaken.
Well, that's what the argument seems to be, that they're wanting moral approval.
Are you in favor of straight marriage?
I'm sorry?
Are you in favor of straight marriage?
Well, I'm in favor of people, if they want to do that, sure.
Okay, why?
Well, yeah, why?
Well, I think the primary purpose of marriage is to raise children.
Oh, well, I mean, in that case, do you think that that a person who is sterile should not be allowed to get married?
Well, I wouldn't say they shouldn't be allowed to get married.
Okay, then why shouldn't a gay person be allowed to get married? Obviously, it has nothing to do with children.
Well, no, and I'm deciding what marriage has become is more of a self-gratifying experience.
No, it's not.
It's not a family-raising experience.
I just explained a minute ago.
Anytime a gay couple gets married, there's no way they can naturally reproduce.
Wait.
Oh, you know of two females that got each other pregnant, or two males?
No, okay, I'm an atheist lesbian mother. I am.
But your lesbian lover didn't get you pregnant.
No, she didn't.
Okay.
You know what? The same assisted reproductive technologies that are available to heterosexual couples are also available to us. And that's how we have our son.
So she is the biological spouse of your offspring?
Well, she's the biological mother of my offspring.
So y'all are both, biologically y'all produced the child. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Really?
Well, we used donor insemination.
Oh, so it's not. Well, I think it's part of her genes and part of yours.
That's not possible.
Well, that's what I said. You can't even do it naturally, or you can't do it
Wait. There are hundreds of thousands of infertile couples who turn to donor insemination.
Well, we're not talking about that, though.
Well, are you in favor of that? Do you think
I don't mind if you went and got inseminated. That's your own business.
Well, do you consider, if heterosexual couples have to resort to donor insemination because the man is infertile, do you consider that to be unnatural?
It's definitely unnatural because it's scientific.
Well, so?
Right, and is that a problem?
So what's the problem?
No, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, then obviously whether something is natural has not got a single thing to do with whether people should be allowed to get married. I mean, you just agreed that the only thing marriage is good for, as far as the state's concerned, is that host of legal arrangements that has already been agreed upon. You think that that's fine for straight couples, right?
Well, I'm trying to get at the point. I mean, what is the point of the marriage? Is it to raise children?
The point of the marriage is the same thing as the point of the marriage for straight people. There's no difference.
Which is?
You want to be in a relationship with someone in a legally recognized relationship.
So that's what I say. You're after some type of moral approval.
No, you said moral. She didn't say moral.
I didn't say moral
approve of it, and your partner approve of it, and that's good enough for both of y'all.
No, because let me tell you what happens. If you want to couch this in terms of raising children, I agree, that's important. Would you agree that it's important for children to have two parents?
Yeah, I think it's best for a child to have a father and a mother.
Well, rather than a father and a mother, would you agree that it's important for children to have enough adults in their lives raising them to take care of them properly?
Well, it's great if they could have aunts, uncles, and grandmas, and grandpas,
That's not what I'm saying.
And brothers and sisters and cousins.
Because here's the thing. I think it's very important that a child have two parents whenever that's possible.
So you think just two people is better than one, which I agree, and three is better than two, and four is better than three.
Well,
so what's your point? I mean,
well, my point is
that there's something holy about two people. That if you have two people, you're automatically going to have a good, stable family.
Well, no. Is your point that heterosexual couples
is against couples?
Yeah,
he's against couples raising children. You're making arguments against marriage. Yes. Every argument that you've made is essentially an argument against marriage. Do you believe that marriage should be legal? At all? For anyone?
Well, I think people should be able to get married
Why?
because they should be able to enter into a relationship.
Okay, there you go. You've answered your own question. Good job.
Sentence, but I was going to say where they have the intent of raising a family.
Oh, so again, we're back to people who have no intent of raising children shouldn't get married.
So
I don't really see the point.
well, okay,
What's the legal point of a marriage that you're trying to get that you cannot attain on your own?
so
That you need this state sanctioned of your gay marriage that you can't attain the same benefit on your own either through private contract or personal consent.
Again, you're arguing against marriage, not gay marriage.
Well, no, not really. I mean,
Yes,
you're
really.
watching it that way, but I'm not. I'm actually arguing against gay marriage, but I'm also saying that the whole purpose of marriage is really to raise children.
well, if you
But we've disagreed with you about
I
that
don't
over
agree
and
with
over
that.
and over again, and your argument doesn't seem to be standing up very well.
so
Well, I mean, you say it's not standing up because you've already got your mind made up and you think you're right.
well, no, my
My point is that you really want to actually adopt children, and that's really the point of you want to get sanctioned as a married couple.
well, no, there's lots of married couples that have no intention of adopting children.
Well, I think across the board, the reason they do, I think there's 2 points here. I think gay people want to have public approval of their relationship, and they want to have advantages of being married, like adopting children. Cause
I don't know how many more times, I'm sorry, I'm going to drop this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times you can just keep saying the same thing over and over again, and we can say you're mistaken and show it from a legal standpoint.
Yeah.
But there's no point in that.
Well, and not only that, let me tell you something. You need to have a short history lesson here. The lesbian gay boom, they call it the gay baby boom.
Oh, that's precious.
Yes. The lesbian baby boom started back in the 1980s, okay? We figured out how to do this, and I guess women have been figuring out how to do it for a long time anyway. We don't have any problems reproducing, so we can have our own kids, and I guess about a third of the kids under 18 in this country live in a household with either a single parent or in a gay or lesbian couple.
I'll take your word for it.
So, it's out there, it's happening. We're having kids. You're going to have to figure out how to deal with that. And, the case here is that if my partner and I had been married, then I would have been automatically the second parent on my son's birth certificate, because that's what the rules are. And so if we had been a heterosexual couple, he had been conceived in exactly the same way, then my name would have gone on the birth certificate as the presumptive parent, end of discussion. But because we're a gay couple, I had to go through a formal adoption process and adopt him as his second parent. So in fact, he does have 2 legal parents now, but I had to spend $4,000 to adopt what I consider to be my own child. So, because that's how it is. Her child is my child. That's how it works, but not in the eyes of the law. We believed that it was important for him to have 2 parents, so we took the opportunity to make that happen.
Right. And again, it's not that you can't accomplish these same things with a whole lot of specific effort and expense.
Yeah.
But if you think that marriage is therefore irrelevant because you can simulate marriage with all those actions, then outlaw marriage.
Yeah.
Again,
outlaw marriage completely for everyone.
He doesn't seem to have made a single case against gay marriage that couldn't also be applied to marriage in general.
Yeah.
If you're watching the show live right now, in Austin, obviously, and not on the stream, we will be around after the show at around 6:30 at Threadgill's downtown on 301 West Riverside. So come on, if you're atheist or atheist friendly and your intention is not to preach, proselytize, punch, or provoke. Just realized I didn't say that at the beginning of the show, and it's kind of a tradition. And also, you can email atheist at tv@atheist-community.org if you want to talk to us, but you just can't get on the show today. We had another caller from Austin, but it looks like he dropped, so we're left with an out-of-state caller who agrees with us. Oh well.
Okay.
Anthony in Utah, how are you doing?
Hey, Russell and Jen, how are you guys doing today?
Good.
Pretty good.
Right on. Actually, I disagree with you.
Oh, good.
Sorry. Okay.
Yes. I actually have an objection and a clarification to what you said earlier about Utah and Mormons. The clarification would be, Mormons haven't been polygamous since like 1890. That's when they officially said, hey, no more polygamy in the Mormon religion, and actually in, 1904, I think, they issued another statement saying if you're practicing or condoning polygamy, you're excommunicated.
I actually kind of knew that because I watch Big Love.
Yeah.
Good
Oh,
show. Yeah,
Yeah.
Big Love, is all about a polygamous family trying to hide it from their neighbors.
Huh.
It's pretty
I never
cool.
got that.
Yeah, you can rent it, you can check it out on DVD, but I won't tell you to do that because that would be violating cable access rules.
But of course, there's a group of people in West Texas who think they're Mormons and they're polygamous.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I know about those guys. As fundamentalists, LDS. I mean,
Right.
they represent Mormonism as much as the Phelps represent all of Christianity. So,
You mean they don't?
exactly. Also on that, I guess I would just object to the statement that you made, something along the lines of atheists in Utah, must feel oppressed or, looked down upon or anything like that. And that's not how I feel actually at all. I've been an atheist since I was like 14. My entire family's Mormon, very, very Mormon. And they've never really looked down on it at all. I know, and I've had conversations with dozens and dozens of Mormons, and I mean, there's generally good, interested people that have their faith.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of that is based on some friends of mine who live in Idaho, and there's a lot of Mormons up there. And then, of course, the son of one of my friends actually married into a Mormon family. But of course, he wasn't allowed to get married in the temple because he's not Mormon, and he's had to deal with a lot of their idiosyncrasies. So I don't know. Maybe the folks that are living in Idaho are a little different from the folks that actually live in Utah.
Mormons tend to be extremely anti-gay, though, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That is definitely a broad statement you can
Do
make.
have their own moral panic hot
Yes.
buttons.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, shoot, I had one last thing I just forgot. Dang it. What was it?
Oh.
Sorry.
Wish I could help.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling, and
Yeah, thanks for taking my call.
thanks for correcting us, because we like
Yes.
that. Let's see. We've got mostly open lines. If you're in Austin, and especially if you're a Christian and you disagree with some of the stuff we've said, there's the number right there. If you can see that, then you're probably watching live. And in the meantime, we're going to go to the only other caller that we've got, and that's George in Athens, Greece.
All right. Hi, George.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you? Make sure your computer audio is not on right now.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm looking on the phone, but you're coming around very slow, very low. I can't hear you very much.
Oh,
Okay. All right. Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, then. I'm also an atheist, so that's not on that. But I just wanted to ask you, what do you guys know about Greek Orthodox Christianity?
not a thing.
Yeah. Not,
What should we know?
Well, not a lot. It's not much different, but one of the main selling points here is that since Greek was the language of the New Testament, it's a very used very much to promote that this is the true version of Christianity. It's very affiliating.
To name me a branch of Christianity that doesn't say they're the true version, you know?
Yeah, but they're claiming, the Old Testament is viewed more with Judaism, but the New Testament, which was the basis of Christianity, wasn't Greek. So they feel like it's no-brainer. So that's what I can't even get them to talk about stuff. Sometimes it's infuriating because it's all, when they talk about the English language, this is definitely wrong because it's a translation. The Greek is the real thing.
Well, you know, my sister just screened My Big Fat Greek Wedding as part of the pre-show entertainment for her wedding, and I learned again that every single word comes from Greek. That's at least that's the joke of the movie.
Yeah, we never let people forget that.
All right, is that all?
Yeah, that's all. Just two on the show. But I don't want to go into more of that.
Okay.
You hear it all the time.
All right, thanks for calling and thanks for tuning in from so far away.
No problem. You're back.
Bye. So, let's see. Another thing that occurs to me in the category of moral panic is the whole War on Christmas thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's got some elements of moral panic.
Yeah, I mean, it gets fired up every year. It's really a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing.
Yes.
And it's against people who are, I mean, you know, I have heard a few atheists say they would like to do away with Christmas as a federal holiday, but they're small and disorganized enough that you don't really expect a lot of effective fighting back.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that you can say about the War on Christmas is that it's a phenomenally effective fundraising campaign
Oh, yeah, sure.
for some conservative groups.
I mean, you know, everybody loves freaking Christmas.
Yeah, that's not usually the whole point of the War on Christmas, or excuse me, our moral panic to raise money. Although that's a nice side effect. Speaking of which, the folks who oppose gay marriage on the grounds that the children are at stake, won't somebody please think of the children? Just as a point of reference here. About $73 million was spent on Proposition 8, both for and against. Think of what we could have done for actual children if we'd spent that money on bringing kids out of poverty. So.
One thing I always have to say right around the War on Christmas is that it's kind of ironic that instead of complaining about how commercial Christmas is getting, now Christians complain about how Walmart greeters don't say enough Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our show. I've got 20 seconds to wrap it up, and those are the great people on the screen who make it all happen. There they are on camera. What a handsome bunch, or lovely in whichever case. Anyway, call next week. TV at atheist-community.org is the address. Don't know if you can still hear me, but that's it. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
If you want to take the last one.
I guess.
Okay, we're clear.
Yeah, okay. All right, we've got a few more guys, or we've got a few more people who might like to call in from the chat room. Let's say I'm going to set a hard limit of 15 minutes.
Okay.
Is that too long? All right, James in Phoenix, what's up?
How you doing?
Hey.
I like to say I like,
Thanks.
yeah, I was curious about what you might think of Satan. Dude, I don't know, guys, those atheists, and I'm not. I was curious if you might think of them.
Your phone quality is...
Yeah, you're breaking up really bad.
We can't hear a thing you're saying for the most part. The topic says that you're calling for something to do with the Church of Satan.
Yeah.
Are you for it or against it?
In between.
What?
I'm in between.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you want to know my opinion about the Church of Satan, I think it's just as ridiculous as Christianity in the sense that it's still inspired by Christian mythology, and it's got this sort of added thing of being kind of a, ha-ha, I'll show you by being the thing that you're afraid of.
Yeah. Yeah, Satan is a very Christian concept.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking.
Yeah.
But the only thing was they call themselves atheists, and I feel kind of bad for them up there. Like, I don't know, I'm not really against them. But,
I don't know. It's kind of funny that
I think they're silly, but no sillier than other religions. I mean, they should be allowed to put up their own billboards and have their own state representatives and whatever. But, I mean, you know, if you don't like that, then kick the Christians out, too.
I guess it's kind of like a parody. Getting him on.
Right. Okay, thanks for calling,
No problem.
and see you later. We're in our post-show now, and we're letting the phones be free-for-alls for out-of-state callers for some time now, before we head off to Threadgills. And George from New York is back, and we always love George.
Hi, Russell.
Hey, George.
Hello, Jen. You say free-for-all, and here I am. Can you hear me okay? Because we've had a devil of a time hearing callers.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, because that poor fellow from Greece, he was so fuzzed out. I literally on the Ustream, I could not hear a word the poor fellow said.
Yeah, he was breaking up pretty bad.
Well, that might be a personal issue with him.
Yeah.
I had an idea for a slang thing for the show. You know, as in you're done and all that sort of thing. Every show needs its own lingo. I propose zombie call. That's a call that has essentially died, but yet keeps on moving and making noise.
Yeah.
Not just for the theists, but for the people who call in like that guy who was trying to make some point about gay adoption. Search me as to what it was. It didn't make any sense to me.
Right. You know, you chat people are always griping at us for taking, well, people like you. You know, people who are terrific and fans of the show, but not enough conflict. And so I clung to that gay marriage guy because, you know, everybody wanted to see more conflict.
Oh, conflict is good. I feel kind of sorry for them because some of them you almost think they have a point even if you don't agree with it, but they just go on and on and on even after you or Matt or Jen or Don or Tracy or Jeff or any guy walking off the street or Mohammed or whoever completely shoots them out of the sky. They just keep moving, hence the zombie thing. I think, you know, you got to go for headshots or else, you know, we've all read the Zombie Survival Guide and know how that works.
Right.
One thing, I'll make one serious point and then shut up. Jen, I have heard atheists and secular folk make one argument against gay adoption. I've had big fights over this. I don't agree with it, but here's the case they make. It's a psychology thing. The argument is that because of parental modeling, it would be better for a kid to have a man and a woman as primary parents and caregivers because most kids are going to be straight. Therefore, if they see the primary relationship being a man and a woman, assuming the parents are good people and treat each other with respect, they will model on that, and that will assist them in their development. Now, I think that's an incredibly weak argument. But it is one that people make, and to be fair, it's not religious. They're not going to the Bible. They're not making a tradition argument. That is, they're trying to make a serious development argument.
Yeah, and I guess there's two things. First of all, every gay person that I know had straight parents. And the other thing is it flies in the face of what we know about how sexual orientation develops.
Yeah, I agree.
It comes from really no prior experience, and it actually manifests at around the same time handedness does, at around 2 years old. You can start picking up whether a kid is going to be gay or straight.
Is that why I'm left-handed?
There you go. But there's actually about 30 years worth of research that documents the fact that the kids are fine. So kids raised by gay couples are just fine.
Yeah, I know. It sounds to me like it sounds to me like a slightly more subtle variation of the convention argument that this has worked for most of us so far, so let's not dare change it.
Yeah, and it's almost bordering on this gay panic argument that if you expose them to gay relationships, then they'll either be gay or they'll have really screwed up heterosexual relationships, and there's really no evidence that that's the truth.
Right. Okay, well, I'll stop taking your time. Good show, folks. Hey, Russell.
Yeah.
Horde.
What?
Horde.
Nope. Sorry. Alliance.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, so we give you guys open lines, and now you don't want to call.
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know. I'll give a couple more minutes for people to call in, and if nobody does, then I'm getting out of here.
All right.
So yeah, now people are all yelling about World of Warcraft because we threw this in at the end. I don't have anything against Horde. It's just that my initial guild that I went with all decided to be Alliance. Oh, here's a call.
Yep.
Hello.
Hi, this is Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Where are you from?
I'm from Concho, Arizona,
Okay.
All right.
and I
What's
had
up?
a quick question about very often when human sacrifice is brought up in the Old Testament, often Abraham is used rather
Yeah.
than Jephthah.
Right. Matt
I'm
likes
curious why
Jephthah
that
more.
always seems to happen, that we go with the one that didn't end in a death.
I like Abraham because everybody knows it, and it still, in my opinion, makes the moral point that he was supposed to unquestioningly obey God until he told him otherwise.
Well, and also, if you read that portion of the Old Testament, there's some discussion about whether he actually killed Isaac or not. I mean, I know that there's the point where it says he didn't, but there's another paragraph, and I'd have to actually, I don't know it right offhand, but it's written in such a way that there's no mention of Isaac. You know, it's just that Abraham
Yeah.
came down from the mountain and went on, and so it's like, maybe there's two traditions in there, and in one, he actually did kill him, and in the other, he didn't. Or maybe somebody came back and said, oh, we need to fix this because we can't have, you know, our patriarch sacrificing his firstborn like this.
Okay, well, you know, I was just thinking maybe in the future if we talked about Jephthah more with people, you know, the one where
Yeah.
the daughter is actually offered as a burnt offering.
Oh, and I like that one because,
Right.
you know, he could have said, okay, this deal's off, you know.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
mean,
like-
at least one of them, you know, the idea of them standing up and saying, you know, seriously, there's a line that's being crossed here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thanks. Great show, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
I like to use Abraham as a sort of a hostile, challenging question, like, so God is so moral, if God told you to kill your son, then would you do it? And,
Right.
and if they say, no, you know, he would never say that, then it's easier to just say, oh, but what about Abraham? They'll know that. They won't have heard of Jephthah, and then it
Yeah.
becomes a long explanation.
Yeah, but the Jephthah thing is really good for getting people, it's a good way of flushing out how much they know about their Bible. Because if they've never heard of Jephthah, it's like, oh, maybe you need to read your Bible a little carefully.
Right, yeah. Everybody's now talking about Left 4 Dead, which I played the demo and I really want to buy it, but I've been unemployed for a while. I'm back at work now, but I'm kind of skimping on my entertainment budget. I'll get it later. Zombie first-person shooter multiplayer game. Seems pretty awesome.
I like the idea of the
Matt keeps talking about it, says it's great.
won't let go of,
What?
I like the idea of the zombie collar that just...
Oh, yeah, that's kind of amusing. They obviously started talking about it because of George, who is also a game geek. Obviously. We got no more callers. I think we're wrapping up. Yeah, StarCraft rules. We're now an all-gaming show. I think that means it's time to end. Bye.